Moderate Democrats talking out about the entitlement issue, how crucial it is to deal with it quickly, despite the fact that many Democrats on the campaign trail, including Nancy Pelosi and even President Obama, talked about Republicans wanting to privatize Social Security and Medicare and use the issue in the election leading up to Election Day. This comes on a day when a nonpartisan foundation of Pete Peterson started running ads to instruct people about this issue. Let's bring in our panel about the debt and deficit. Steve Hayes, senior writer for The Weekly Standard. Mara Liasson, national political correspondent of National Public Radio. And we welcome Tim Carney, senior political columnist at the Washington Examiner. Tim, let's start with you. Listen, it's not a surprise that these are moderate Democrats speaking about the issue, but it is fairly stark this close to the election to hear this in opposed to some of the things Democrats said on the stump.
Well, because Republicans were running against Democratic overspending, so they had to defend some of their spending and thus downplay the problem of the debt. But you'll see already Democrats are talking about tax hikes as part of the solution to this. And so I wonder, you know, are tax hikes, are debt on arrival in a Republican House? I would think they are.
Mark.
Well, it depends on what you mean by tax hikes. Is raising the retirement age, is that something that Republicans would reject? Is raising the amount of money that's taxed for Social Security, is that considered a tax hike? I mean, there are a lot of things you can do to Social Security other than raising Social Security taxes.
Sure.
But I think that just as, you know, Senator Conrad just says that the people on the left don't want to touch entitlements, you had Republicans in this election running against Medicare cuts.
Absolutely.
You know, saying the Democrats wanted to cut your Medicare in the health bill.
They said.
Yeah, but the point is, if they're going to do that, that's not a good predicate for having what they call an adult conversation, which is what they say they want about entitlements. But I do think this is the big issue, and it's an important first step towards getting the United States on a more competitive growth model. You have to do something about the debt and the deficit, and you are going to have this commission that's going to report something, even if it's not a 14 out of 18 vote for a unified proposal. It might be a bunch of proposals, but they are going to report something on December 1st.
You're talking about the President's Debt and Deficit Commission comes December 1st. What is the hope there, Steve? Is there hope?
Very little, I think. I mean, there are reasons to be optimistic. For the first time, I think, in years, maybe even decades, we're actually having this conversation. And there are people, there aren't very many of them, Paul Ryan, Jeff Flake, Mitch Daniels, others, who are willing to talk about this in a straightforward and forthright way. I mean, you ask Mitch Daniels, you see him on Fox News Sunday, what should we do about this? Now, usually that results in politicians hemming and hawing and, oh, well, this is a serious question, we've got to address it seriously. Mitch Daniels will say, we really need to consider raising the retirement age. Boom. He answers the question. So
or means testing.
Right. So you've got politicians, people in office willing to actually have that discussion. For many years it was called the third rail of American politics. I think it still is to a certain extent, but you have them talking about it. The problem is, they're not actually going to do anything. There's going to be some talk about this. Then everybody's going to demagogue everybody else.
And we saw this. Leadership, why doesn't the Republican leadership line up behind Paul Ryan?
It's both. Look, they should. I think they should. If I had my choice, if I could direct them to do that, I would say do it. The problem is both sides demagogue. You had Republicans running against Democrats.
No, but at this point, aren't Americans ready for an adult conversation? But didn't you get this out of the election? That perhaps the American people
didn't say
the exit polls didn't say that.
I don't think people are. I mean, again, the fact that Republicans successfully ran on Obamacare, cut your Medicare, that's a little bit embarrassing. The fact that Republicans put out their Contract for America sort of thing, the Pledge to America, and that basically said we're going to cut non-defense discretionary spending. That's 17% of the pie, basically, that they're willing to take a scalpel. Do they have the will to go after entitlements? Do they have the will to go after defense spending? I don't see that yet, even though
you're putting the onus on the House Republicans who are coming in and obviously will take charge in January of the House. But is there some onus to be put on President Obama and the Democratic Senate and the President's Debt and Deficit Commission?
And
absolutely.
Even to talk the president's language of getting more revenue, one of the things I see him talking, we're going to hike rates on the highest earners, but he's multiplying all these tax credits. You get a tax credit if you convert your car to an electric car. You get a tax credit if you build a windmill, even if it never spins. So he's multiplying these tax credits to use a tax code to modify behavior, yet still he thinks the right thing to do then is to go out and increase rates. He's not doing an adult discussion even on taxes.
Although people have been talking about tax expenditures as spending, some surprising conservative voices on that, and that's at least a little bit hopeful.
Yeah, look, I don't think Republicans should make any apologies for the fact that tax hikes as tax hikes should be off the table. It cedes the debate about the size and scope of government to the Democrats. If you suddenly say, well, we should consider these tax hikes, and I guarantee you when the Deficit Commission comes out, you're going to have professional Washington scolds like David Gergen and others saying, oh, these Republicans aren't serious because they won't raise your taxes. Well, there's a reason that they don't want to raise your taxes, and it's because it gives away the argument about the size and scope of the government from the beginning. Don't raise taxes. Cut spending and cut it in serious ways. I mean, we really have to have a discussion about the fundamentals here, about shuttering departments, big picture things, in addition to entitlement spending, in addition to, to the smaller things.
But this far out to the next election, Maura, can the American people handle talk about under a certain age cutting benefits?
Well, if that's the Ryan plan, which is basically under 55, you'd voucherize Medicare. Now, if the Republican Party, even just the Republican Party in Congress is willing to get behind him, then that conversation could start. But he doesn't have a whole lot of takers in his own party.
Next up, earmarks. Before we start, log on to our homepage at foxnews.com/special report. Tell us what you think should be done about them in our online poll. We will be right back.